Greetings, friends. Squancho here, your dutiful monkey boy, back once again to read from Chapter 8 of Sir Ballsfart's debut masterpiece novel, Sir Ballsfart in the Forest of Penises. Today, we will be reading from Chapter 8, entitled Abyss and Vinegar. As always, I want to start with a content warning, a trigger warning, for anyone that is offended by words, and also to let you know to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to know every time that I upload another one of these riveting tales. Alright, so Chapter 8, here we go. A croctopus, as you might already presume, is basically a crocodile, except at the same time, it is also an octopus. I'll let you guess which part goes where. I think you can figure it out. As I floated there, looking up at that sign, I could feel my throat dry, despite it being completely full of water. Immediately, my eyes flashed around me. Those horrible fucks. They could be anywhere. Any or all of those off-shooting tunnels could be infested with them. After a few moments of silent terror, I recalled just how large my fucking balls were, took a deep, watery breath, and centered myself. Should I move quietly? Should I go nice and easy and try not to rouse the attention of anything swimming down here? No. Fuck that. I had only one direction to go, and so, without any more hesitation, I began busting my fishy ass down that dark and mysterious corridor. The surprise trip over the falls had me extremely exhausted, but given my current state of paranoid adrenaline, I somehow found the strength to zigzag up and down through the corridor, my big, powerful hind flipper pushing me all the way to my top speed. Ahead, I could see that there was still no end in sight for those eerie blue lanterns. They simply led on, further and further down at a gradual slant, but there was nowhere else I could go. Climbing back up the waterfall was simply not an option. I had to continue pushing forward. As I pressed on, my eyes darted all around me, but the only things I could see in the darkness were the gently flapping of moss clumps and the occasional outline of off-shooting caves. What the fuck? A big shadow passed over the blue lamps. It was heading right for me. My heart completely stopped, but then I saw it. It was big and dark brown, and I recognized it immediately. It was a seal. Or a sea lion, honestly, I can't tell, but who gives a shit? At least it wasn't a croctopus, and that's all that mattered. I let out a watery sigh of relief. Just as a massive croctopus emerged from a cave and sunk its jaws into the unsuspecting mammal. Holy fucking shit. The whole back half of that seal was crushed beneath the croctopus's teeth as it thrashed to and fro, spewing out a dark cloud of seal blood. I tried to dodge the random seal chunks that drifted my way, but I could hardly bring myself to move at all. I was in shock, but I quickly pushed through this paralysis, forcing myself to swim around the grisly display. Something grabbed me. I could feel one of the monster's tentacles wrap around my tail fin. I jerked and fought it off, hoping not to be pulled into the frenzy, but soon realized that it was not really a tentacle at all, but rather one of that seal's loose swinging intestines. Oh, thank goodness. What a relief. The croctopus continued thrashing wildly behind me, and I could only barely make out what I was even looking at. The monster was bigger than a dugong, tan and leopard-spotted, with 8 spiked tentacles. I continued looking backward as I swam, keeping an eye on the horror, soon noticing that the horrific beast was not alone. Another of its species emerged from one of the tunnels. It was behind the first one and did not attack me, but instead joined in on that hearty feast of seal meat. Shit! They were pack hunters. That's even worse. I faced forward and now pushed even harder than before, knowing damn well that being fat and hairy with a big flipper is not a good look when you're surrounded by monsters that eat seals. Remember when I said that I reached my top speed before? Well, that was nowhere near my top speed. No, this, right now, this was my top speed. Holy ball sacks, you guys. I was just so gosh darn spooked. And I was definitely shitting myself as I fled. But soon noticed that nothing was actually coming out of my butt. In fact, I didn't even have a butt. Sure, I was so scared at the time that I didn't really question this anomaly at first, but as I got closer to the end of the path, I began to realize that L'Oreal hadn't made me a fishy butthole. Damn it. That's quite the oversight. I still had my regular human dick peeking out the front, sure, but she apparently forgot to give me a pooper. What the hell? Where was my poop going? Whatever. Now is not the time to figure it out. I just kept my eyes forward and continued swimming, though the mystery of my poop storage continued to puzzle me in the back of my mind. Finally, I came to the very end of the tunnel, marked by the end of those bright blue lights. The path dipped under a ridge, and beneath this ridge I could see that far brighter lights emanated from the other side to greet me. These lights were in fact so bright that at first I thought I might have somehow returned to the surface, but the surface this was not. No, this was a city. This was Niadis. Fuck yeah. I had made it. All right. Now, Niadis is pretty hard to explain to us land dwellers because you're not used to mermaid cities or the idea of cities being three-dimensional and shit. Now, we tend to think of cities in terms of roads that lead left, right, forwards and backwards, but Niadis doesn't work like that. Firstly, it's kind of a big, mushy-looking, spiky ball. The whole thing hanging from the ceiling of a giant underground atrium. This atrium is so ludicrously big that I wouldn't even know what to compare it to. It's probably something like 10,000 feet across and 10,000 feet deep, but who knows? It's just very, very big and very, very dark. But even though Niadis is deep down in the pitch-black darkness underground, you hardly even notice it because there are so many crazy light sources all over the place. And not just those blue ones that led me down the tunnel, but purple ones, pink ones, green ones, red ones, and so on. Some seem small, like maybe they're windows, but others are as big as whole buildings. It's all very psychedelic, and honestly, the colour of everything else down there is just flat out nuts as well. Even the coral that makes up the basis of the merpeople structures comes in a wild assortment of hues and species, and long before you even make it to the city limits, you're already surrounded by a bustle of strange characters, as countless merpeople come and go with the daily traffic. After a moment of analysing these diverse throngs, I quickly deduced where the entrances to the city were located. The returning merpeople were waiting in lines that stretched like big coiling chains out from at least 10 different cylindrical ports located all around the outside of that giant psychedelic blob. Figuring I could sneak through one of these cylinders alongside everyone else, I mixed in with one of these crowds, slowly drifting with the others towards the walls of Naiadis. Gradually, the line brought me into one of the tubes, and I could see the city's gatekeepers processing entrance up ahead. The gatekeepers were soldiers, each wearing coral armour and carrying coral weapons, most of them holding spears. I tried to think of a good lie to tell them before I got to the end, but I never came up with anything, so I just winged it like I do everything else. The soldier looked at me and trilled something in merpeople talk. I just stared back at him in wide-eyed confusion.
Excuse me?
He repeated the question in merspeak.
I am sorry, brother, but I have been gone from this mermaid town for a very long time. I've been imprisoned in Dangleberry since I was a child. I have forgotten our tongue.
The mer guy looked me down incredulously. He then turned to another guard and said something that I couldn't understand, causing the second guard to leave the room. Shit. I knew exactly what that meant. He was reporting me, and now I was going to prison. Mer prison. God damn it. Within a few seconds, a more heavily armoured mermaid came to join us. She looked immediately upon my dick shell with disgust. What's wrong with your codpiece?
I had to improvise. Like I was just telling the other guy, I've been imprisoned in Dangleberry for decades. They tortured me and tried to make me pass for human. I've come so far to rejoin my people. Please, if you can, just ask your captain for some lenience in such a situation.
I am the captain. And yes, you look very fucked up. The shell on your penis is completely inappropriate. That kind of shell is used only as a dish for serving food, specifically on religious holidays. How have you forgotten your culture and the tongue of your own people?
Yes, I was very young. Please, just show me mercy.
She laughed, a dickish mermaid laugh. Mercy? Oh dear, it seems you have been gone a long time. If you're worried about mercy, then I bet you'll survive about as long in this city as you would in its dungeons.
So that means...
She turned to face the other guard. Take down his information. Let him through, but keep his file ready. I have a feeling we'll be arresting him soon enough anyway. She turned back to me.
Or, more likely, we'll need to bury him.
The soldier nodded and responded in their silly fish people language before turning to face me. So what's your name, you hideous creature? He asked with his native mermaid dickishness.
I am... Fart Balls?
Are you asking me if that's your name, or are you trying to say your name?
No, that's my name. Fart Balls. Fart Balls, the mer guy.
All right,
Fartbosh the Mer guy? And how long do you intend to be staying in Niatis? 1 week, please. 1 week it is. And finally, what brings you to Niatis? Oh, shit. I hadn't thought of that one yet. I tried to come up with something that corroborated my lie. I'm here to find my father. What? Seriously? Your father? Yes. Wow, alright, that should be interesting. With his clawed merman finger, the soldier etched words into a flat tablet of sheetrock. Okay then, that's everything, Fartbosh. Welcome to Niatis. As we say around here, don't fucking die. Thank you. The opening before me expanded, and I swam on through, entering into a large downward tilting thoroughfare. For a moment I lingered, stunned by my surroundings. It was all just so massive and busy. Wow, I guess I'd never considered that those... Oh, come on. I guess I had never considered that those merfaggots, oh, damn it, had this much stuff to do. There were shops and restaurants, banks and apartments. Mer pricks worked tirelessly to repair and construct new structures. Mer sluts strolled beside them with the pet seals on leashes. I had never seen anything like it. Well, other than a regular city, but that was different. The bright pastels and the lack of spatial limitations, and of course, everyone was half fish. I needed to get to Rape Fist's castle, but right now, I just wanted to explore this insanity. First things first, though. If I was going to enjoy the local mer sites, then Daddy needed some mer money. To my upper left floated a dense crowd of... Oh, come on. To my upper left floated a dense crowd of mertards, and I immediately considered a classic scheme. It was the oldest trick in the book, really. I swam into the crowd, pressing myself against those around me, saying, "Excuse me," while rummaging between them. Many of the mermaids that I bumped into had kelp satchels slung about their shoulders that made my job far too easy. And then, when I was done pilfering the goods, I squeezed back out of the crowd to review my score. In my hands, I now hold almost 10 stolen shells. These were of a few different colours, each with intricate symbols etched onto its faces, and were therefore obviously mer money. Sure, I may not be able to find food in a forest made of pure dicks, but I can always pickpocket dumbasses in a densely populated city. Call it a gift. I set off down another avenue, this one leading straight upward, and as I ascended I noticed an elderly merman huddled in a small corner of coral, his wrinkly old body covered in kelp and moss. To his side he had attached a sign to the wall, and before him was a round coral pot with a big hole in its top. Again, I may be a foreigner, but I've seen enough cities to know what I was looking at. I smiled at the old beggar and held up one of my shells. I guess that kind of shell must have been worth a lot, because his wrinkly old eyes opened excessively wide and his jaw hung open in excitement. I then made it look like I was setting the shell into his pot carefully, while I actually stole a few of his shells that were already in there. The old mer geezer then thanked me profusely in mer people talk as I bolted away before he got a chance to investigate the pot. Yes, this day was going mighty well.
At least, I thought this was still during the day. I guess you can't really tell what time it is in these underground mer towns, but it was probably still before sunset. Regardless, it's never too early to get fucked up. And I eventually came upon an establishment that was clearly a bar. So I swam my fishy ass inside to try the local mer booze. Upon passing through the circular entrance, I was quickly caught off guard by the fact that the whole room was completely upside down. I guess that was like the theme of this bar or something. Whatever. I reoriented myself accordingly and approached the barmaid behind the counter. She said something in the stupid mermaid language to me, but I just shook my head and shrugged.
I only speak conlang.
What the fuck's wrong with your face?
You know humans?
Yeah?
I got kidnapped by humans as a little kid. They beat me.
And that's why you're fat and have a beard?
Yes.
Huh. Well, that sucks.
It sure does. So what you got on tap?
Around here, we mostly sell guns.
What's guns?
Comes in a bag, you slurp it out. Tastes like whale cum, because it's mostly whale cum.
Does it get you fucked up?
Of course.
I'll take two.
The mer barmaid turned around to grab a pair of those leathery bags of booze. And as she did, I looked down at my money. I didn't know how much any of this crap was worth, and though I could ask her, I didn't want to risk her taking advantage of me. That would, after all, be a very mermaid thing to do. That'll be 300, she said as she turned back around, handing me the bags. I held up a single beige shell.
Can you break this?
I said 300, buddy, not 3.
Oh, right. Sorry. I meant this one. Can you break this?
I held up a teal shell. Are you fucking around? I don't think we've made that much all day. You seriously don't have anything smaller? I looked back at my hand. Maroon shell or grey shell? Beige was too small, teal was too big. I went with the maroon shell. The barmaid sighed in frustration. Fine, if that's the smallest you've got. She took the shell out of my hand, hid it in the drawer, and returned to me 17 grey shells. I tried to remember what was worth what, and though I honestly had no clue, it still seemed like I was pretty loaded. I could probably afford something made out of kale or fish scale to carry my money in. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Much safer than keeping it all in my hands. I hugged both bags of gunge with my right arm as my left hand was still full of shells, and soon found a nice little table to sit at. This table was, of course, upside down like everything else in that stupid bar. And though it didn't look that way, I could still tell, and it was pretty disorienting. The top of the table, which was basically the bottom, was sticky, but I didn't want my money touching that shit. So I set my shells on the underside of the table to keep them from drifting down to the ceiling. Unfortunately, the general swishing of the water in the room still had my money sliding all over. Fuck. I would have to stick one of the gunge bags to the bottom of the table and keep the shells in my hand. Not that I couldn't steal more money if I absolutely had to. It would just be inconvenient. I pinched open the little nipple tip on the first bag and sucked some of its contents into my mouth. That shit was goopy and bitter with a sort of vinegar aftertaste. I can't say that I know for sure what fermented whale cum tastes like, but that stuff was pretty close to what I would have imagined. And though it was a little difficult to get down your throat, after the first few sips, you do get used to it. Trying to enjoy my return to civilization, or whatever the fuck you call this urban mermaid bullshit. I sat back and surveyed my fellow patrons. There was one group sitting at the bar, chatting loudly and laughing. They seemed to be celebrating something. Behind them in the corner sat a quiet couple trying to get real romantic. There were only about 3 or 4 other patrons in the establishment, and they all seemed to be lonely drunks. Ha! What losers! Who drinks alone? I took another sip from my whale cum and then began to ponder my situation. I needed a plan. I had a busy week coming up. Step 1. I needed to find someone that could give me directions to the caves that ran through the mountains. Though once I got up there, I wouldn't really have any way of taking down Rape Fists without a good weapon. Could I hope to find something along the way? That's never a safe bet. Alright, scratch that. Step 1 would be finding a weapon. Maybe I could try to get one of those cool spears that the Mer soldiers carry. But I actually might need something more exotic. Perhaps something magical. L'Oreal did say that Rape Fist was pretty powerful. Okay, so that's the real step 1. Step 1, find someone that can supply me with a magical weapon. And then step 2, find a way out of here. Step 3, find my way through the mountains to Rape Fist's citadel. Step 4, kill Rape Fist right in his stupid face. Step 5, return home with my magical anal beads and pick up where I left off with Princess Tits. There we go. Perfect plan. Nice. But hold up. I still had at least 6 more days before I could leave, because otherwise I would be stuck in a cave without legs until the spell wore off. Shit. That meant I needed to find a place to crash. And honestly, I was already getting tired. All that river running, waterfalling, and croctopus evading had me looking forward to an early night. Alright then. So before all that other stuff, I needed to find somewhere to pass out, preferably a nice little inn or something. There we go. Good job, me. Feeling good about this plan. And also, just feeling good in general. That gunge was definitely beginning to take effect. To be honest, it was actually some pretty strong shit. I took another sip. Just then, another customer floated into the tavern. He twisted himself upside down, reorienting with the rest of us, and suddenly locked eyes with me from across the room. I recognised him, but I couldn't remember from where. Oh, right. He was the beggar. Ha! He was an alcoholic. Fucking of course he was. But he looked even more like shit than before. And he just kept staring at me. I looked around to see if he was actually eyeing anyone else, but he wasn't. I then smirked and waved, and that's when I realized that he was extremely pissed off. Oh, fuck. Right. He realized that I stole his money. Not good. Not good at all. The merp prick shot across the room like a cannonball, arms and claws outstretched, madness burning in his bright black eyes. Was I completely fucked? Yes, friends, I was so very completely fucked. The old beggar's razor-sharp claws swiped for my head, but I reflexively ducked beneath the table. Well, technically I ducked above the table, but you get the idea. Now, normally, in these situations, and they do occur a lot, I would have tried to use my chair as a shield, but this time it was attached to the floor. Ceiling. Whatever. You know what I'm saying. Either way, that strategy wasn't happening, and instead my shell money just went flying all over as the fuck started tearing through the table. Shit. I swung around the base while Mr. Psychopathic Sea Terror growled insanely, gnashing his fangs and tusks and swiping wildly at the air. Water. Whatever. One of the old fucker's claws busted a gunge bag mid-swipe, sending globules of grey slime splattering gracefully all about the room. At this point, I was running completely on impulse and pretty much just crazily backflipping through the bar, generally gliding towards the floor/ceiling. Had my attacker been in his prime and not a starving old fogey, I think I would have already been bleeding out by this point. But luckily for me, this prick wasn't in the best mer shape. My fellow patrons were now scattering as I slid beneath/above the tacky coral chandelier. And when the merbagger's claws smashed through this decoration, the result was a frenzied explosion of fish bones, shells, and coral, causing just enough of a chaotic mess to buy me the seconds I needed to book it for the door. In truth, I nearly escaped, but instead of doing that, my head smacked right into an invisible surface. God damn it! Those fucking force fields! I turned back to find the beggar tearing through the tables, his face wrinkled and bony and seething with revenge. And I was just about to be split to ribbons when a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind and pulled me through the door. What the fuck was going on? I turned to realize that the force field hadn't been created by the beggar, and before that psycho could take me out, he ran into another force field himself. I looked upon the faces of two heavily armored guards, and before I could even say a word, my hands were bound and one of the officers was dragging me through the water. A few yards behind me, the same was happening to the beggar, and I could hear him pleading with his controller as the bar shrank away in the distance, along with my money and booze. Fucking damn it. And I was having such a nice day. The guard continued dragging me by my arms, and I, not being a real mer person, felt like I was going to have my limbs yanked off. I could hear the guards speaking to one another, and though I don't know exactly what they said, I could definitely tell that they were mocking my weight. This was obvious by all of the puffed cheeks and fat guy gestures they kept making. Yeah, laugh it up, fuckers. Real fucking classy. Finally, after swimming probably 20 Mer-City blocks, we came at last to our destination, a giant periwinkle structure with very few windows. And once we got inside, it was a rather similar situation to when I first entered the city. What was my name? Why was I in town? Yada yada. I gave them my side of the story, lying my balls off as usual, and as expected, they didn't buy a word of it and then tossed me into a cell. Fuck. Mermaid cells suck, you guys. They're spherical, and in my case, the door was on the floor. There are no windows, it's just a dark bar, and your only light source is what's coming shining through the little bar door at the bottom. As soon as the guards left, I felt around the walls for weaknesses, and though I did find a glory hole, I didn't find anything genuinely promising. Alright, fine. It probably wasn't really a glory hole. It was more likely used for whatever weird way fish people piss and shit. But maybe it was also for getting your dick sucked. Who knows? I didn't care about mermaid toilets anyway. I'd been sliding my slug and pissing out in the open since I pulled into town. Sure, that meant that I had to taste it too, but so did everyone else, and fuck them. Also, side note, I still hadn't figured out where my poop was going. It just seemed like I was carrying it around with me, somewhere in my big tail flipper, close to where my butt used to be. It wasn't a problem or anything, but with time, it might become one. And I was really beginning to wish that L'Oreal and I had planned this whole thing out a little bit better. Mainly though, my biggest gripe at the moment was just how boring that place was. Oh, and also that it was really uncomfortable trying to lie down because of all the surfaces being curved and made from coral. But other than that, yeah, mermaid jail is mainly just boring. There was only one meal that night. It was a live sea slug, handed to me through the bars. I didn't complain, I'd had worse in my life. Fuck, I'd had worse literally that week. Remember when I was chewing foreskin and downing turd water? I popped the fat, colourful slug into my mouth and chewed it to pieces like a rabid wolf. After that, I just sort of floated around some more while pondering ways to escape. Unfortunately, there was no social time in Mermaid Jail, and that was a real bummer. Not because I wanted friends, but because in the countless times I've been imprisoned, meeting fellow inmates was always the first step in throwing together an escape plan. No social time, nothing to do, no laying down. I got hardly any sleep that night before my little floor door opened and the guards demanded that I join them. Apparently, it was time for my hearing. Wow, okay. Chapter 8. That was that. That happened. So Ballsfart, explored the mermaid town and got put in jail for doing what he does. So, all right, I hope that you're, I guess, what would you say, enjoying this? Of course what am I saying? Of course you are. Of course you are enjoying this because, as I have repeatedly stated, this is objectively the greatest story ever told. And as always, give Sir Ballsfart your money. I guess he's really persistent about reminding me that is very, very important to him. So please, if you can, just throw your money at him. I guess I don't know. It's the greatest story that I've ever told. So, all right. Well, until next time, this has been Squancho the Monkey Boy reading Sir Ballsfart in the Forest of Penises. I hope you all have a great day and goodbye.